You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, dedicated to the 40-plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. Hey, welcome back to 40 Fit Radio and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. We are in the house today and it is myself, Coach D, along with Coach Trent.
I'm still alive.
He is still alive. The coronavirus has not taken him yet. I use that word. We're going to talk about the immune system today, but we've got another guest in the house, and our friend, fellow starting strength coach, and also registered dietitian and expert and advisor to the stars, Robert Santana. What's up, dude?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm good.
He gets better looking every time I see him.
I love his curls.
Yeah, I have goals. I'm trying to grow mine out over here, but you know.
It's just the lighting or lack thereof.
I told him earlier this morning he was going to go bald, and he cursed me with some kind of curse Santanas have. I don't know. It's some type of foreign thing. He tried to curse me. I don't know, but he cursed me.
And then you try to curse me. So
No, I didn't. Hey, just because you're follicularly advanced, you don't have to, flaunt it. Okay, some of us look better bald anyway.
So
exactly. Well, I won the contest, remember, at the SSCA?
Yeah, I know.
Because it was so competitive.
Yes. All those guys are bald. Oh, man. So, guys, today we're going to talk about just the basic functions of your immune system. We thought, what a better thing to talk about today than discuss with our listening audience, the 40 Fit Nation, talk about your immune system and how can you keep your immune system strong during these types of times. Now, what we won't be selling you and prophesying about and bringing you is a bunch of gobbledygook, a bunch of junk science about take this supplement, take that supplement. What we're really going to be talking about are the basic principles that you should think about when you think about having a good, healthy immune system.
you're telling me that CBD is not the answer?
No, it's the answer to everything.
Dang it.
Now you need weed.
Yeah. Weed. Whiskey's not the answer either. Wine's not the answer. I know, guys, I'm crushing your dreams out there, but you can't kill this thing by just downing, like 750 mils a night of Weller 12 or Weller 107. It just doesn't work.
That's good for the soul. If not the body.
Well, hey, I just got a bottle of Foolproof the other day. That stuff was good.
Oh,
sweet.
Still haven't had it.
Yeah. Well, Robert hasn't sent us any good whiskey in a long time. What is up with that, man?
I don't know, man.
He hasn't mailed me anything, a special gift or anything like that.
I think that's illegal, although I heard they lifted some restrictions on that.
Is that essential now? Is good whiskey essential?
It's alcohol, and alcohol kills the virus.
Essential business.
Yeah, there you go.
It kills the virus.
It does.
So it's essential.
Okay.
So
there we go.
All right, so let's talk about the immune system. So we could get really crazy sciencey on you here, and then you would just be bored out of your mind with what we're going to talk about. So we're really not going to talk about too deep into the science realm, but we do have to cover some basics about, first of all, most people don't understand what their immune system is. They have no idea that their body has this, their human organism has this protective immunity or defense system that is the whole person, and it's made up of lots of different parts. So it's not as simple to say, take this supplement or do this or do that. It is a group of covariates and systems that come together to create the defenses that we have.
Right. So we
Makes sense.
have like the circulatory system and the nervous system, like when you go back to Bio 101.
Right.
And let's not forget lymphatic
yes. system. And so, but the immune system, as we refer to it, is really involves many of those systems, right?
Well, we have two basic types of immunity when we're talking about the systems. We have what we would call peripheral immunity, which would be outside of the spinal cord and the brain system, the neurological system. And then we have neurological immunity. So we have peripheral immunity would be all the other body organs, all the other structures in your bodies, in your body, and also the neurological immunity. Now, within that system of immunity, now here's a good definition of the human immune system. It is the defense system that a host uses or that a human body uses to ward off or to protect itself from antigens or pathogens, things on the outside that when they do get in the inside, we can kill them, or we can avoid them to get on the inside to start with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So in the immune system, we have the following general organs. We have the lymphatic vessels, and Robert already talked about that just a little bit here. We have the lymph nodes, which are where the lymphatic vessels all converge into, okay, to cleanse the body fluids, what we call the humerals. Humeral is another word for fluid,
Yeah.
okay? So
Goes back to the ancient Greek humors, right?
That's
It's a
right, the
reference to
humors
that.
of the body, right? Then we have the thymus, we have the spleen, we have the bone marrow of the body, we have the appendix, the tonsils, the adenoids, and then what also we call the Peyer's patches, okay? We also have within this system, and a lot of people don't consider this part of the immune system, but it's obvious, we have the integumentary system, which would be the skin. The skin is this viable defense against outside bugs. And let's call them bugs. We can call them antigens or pathogens, but let's just call them bugs.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, they're things that we don't want in our body, or if they do get in our body or they get on our body, we can kill them before they replicate, and they take over us and they make us their host, the place they like to live off of.
Right.
And then they basically just scavenge off of us.
So yeah, I think everyone knows that it's kind of common sense. If you scrape your knee, you need to go wash it. And
Right.
the reason for that is you've scraped off some of the barrier that you have against those foreign antigens, right?
Right. You have two things. You've scraped off a potential barrier, like part of the wall that protects us, and you also have been exposed to antigens or pathogens within our environment. And it could be, we talked about this before as we were all offline. We were just talking about the immune system. We kind of going over our outline for this podcast. And basically, a lot of people don't understand this, but you're always fighting. Mm-hmm. You're always fighting. Mm-hmm. And if you have an immunocompromised system, meaning you have a lowered immune system, and there's many conditions that cause that, there's some medications that we take for other conditions, inflammatory conditions, connective tissue diseases like lupus and RA, and these other inflammatory arthritises and conditions, connective tissue diseases, that we take immunosuppressive drugs.
Right.
And these drugs naturally lower the inflammatory response, so they make us feel better. But they also make us weaker in regards to fighting outside antigens, outside bugs. And so when we think about the immune system too, within our immunity, our defense system, we have what's called the innate immune system, which is what you're genetically made up of based on your innate ability to fight infections or bugs. And we also have the adaptive immune system. So those are the two major types of the immune system. And then within that, within both of those, the innate and adaptive, we have humoral immunity, which is within the body fluids, all the different chemicals that are in the body fluids that can help to fight infections and fight the bugs. And then we also have what we call cell-mediated immunity, which is an adaptive type immunity where our cells respond to a particular antigen or a pathogen, a bug that gets in our body.
Okay.
So that's the basics, very basics of the immune system. But what I wanted to talk about today on our podcast with these gents is basically how can you, as part of our listening audience, protect yourself as best possible from getting viruses, antigens, pathogens, bugs that are in our world space.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the immunity complex, and let's go down the list of what creates your immune system, and then what can we do to support a strong immune system, right, guys?
Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense? Okay. So the first thing is genetics. We always talk about this. It's kind of like we throw this out and we're like, if you got bad genetics, you're kind of screwed.
You could get less screwed.
Yeah, that's true. But genetics,
we're honest.
Yeah, genetics play a big role in how your human genome is responding, how your genes are maximally or less maximally expressing themselves to support a healthy immune system. I hate to tell you this, but guys, some people are just born with a stronger functioning immune system. We don't really know why. And immunology is a very complicated field of study. There are some reasons there, but for the sake of our podcast today, genetics play a significant role in your ability to have a strong defense system.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So there's not a whole lot you can do about that other than we've already talked about how strength training can maximize the expression of your genetics, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We can through strength training, we can maximize the maximum genetic potential of the organism through getting the person stronger and improving hormonal function and all these other body systems. And we can make people express their best genes as much as possible, and then also depress their less than healthy genes, I guess you would say. Like if they have the gene propensity for obesity, if they have the gene for increased body fat or heart disease or some other disorder, then we can, through environment and through the way we live, we can influence that gene expression. So it's not like we can't change our genetics. We can turn on genes and turn them off.
Yeah, so
by how we live.
We're kind of born with the set we have, and then there's the epigenetics, right? It's like the expression thereof of what you got.
And what we choose to do with those genes.
Right, right.
You know, makes sense? All right, so genetics is one thing that helps to make a strong immune system. Number two would be your lifestyle choices. And we could go down through a myriad of list of items, but your lifestyle choices, your underlying general health condition. Are you generally a healthy person? And so let's talk about some of the things that we've talked about ad nauseum on the 40 Fit Radio about things that create a healthy lifestyle. And we could probably say top on the board, and that's why we brought Robert, our community expert here, content expert. That's why we brought him on, was nutrition. Nutrition plays a huge role in how your body is not just fueled, but how it is supplied with the natural resources, I guess you would say the raw materials that it needs to function. So, Robert, let's talk a little bit about how nutrition can play a role in your immune system.
Right. So I think that it can't be overstated that we have a pretty poor diet in this country, and that's starting to spread out into other countries as well. I think it's probably more of a worldwide thing at this point. And I think that the supplement business has kind of upplayed, the effectiveness of a lot of these antioxidant supplements. So I guess we can kind of start there because people are familiar with this. Like you always hear, eat your fruits and vegetables, drink your tea, and you have flavonoids, you have polyphenols, you have all these different antioxidant supplements that you can take or get from food. So I think that what I'm trying to get at here is that if you have a poor diet, you're probably going to have a lot of oxidative stress.
What's a poor diet? What do you mean by poor diet?
So let's just go with the typical quote unquote Western diet, right?
Yeah,
so high fat,
sure.
high carb, low in fiber. Lots of junk food such as like soda, snacky foods like chips, pizza. High fat hamburgers, with white flour. Just real empty calories and micronutrient. What's the word I'm looking for? Very very
deficient micronutrient
deficient foods. Yes. So
sure.
Just a lot of junk calories that don't give you a whole lot other than, calories for the most part. It's, big reason people are heavier. So, go on.
Yeah. I mean, the typical American diet is most Americans are going to eat fast food maybe 3 or 4 times a week or 2 or 3 times a week. And then the foods that they eat in their home, it could be packaged, it could be processed foods. Instead of thinking about a meal that might be something like free-range chicken or a really good salmon, followed by a salad and maybe some leafy green vegetables like broccoli or something. And so...
that's Robert, I saw you pointed out on Instagram, all you have to do is walk through the stores and see what went off the shelves first.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember
Oreos.
2.5 weeks ago here in Keller, I mean, this is before the panic really started, right?
Yeah.
But the full, beautiful aisles full of produce.
Yeah.
No bread.
Yeah.
Zero bread.
Yep.
And
most cereals
most
were gone.
bread products were gone. In fact, what's funny to me is like the canned food actually stayed out for a long time.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
that got bought up.
Yeah. It was weird. It was weird. You didn't see, obviously people.
I saw a guy in line with like 11 frozen pizzas. And it, like, he had just a cart full of frozen pizzas.
He's got 11 days of meals.
Yeah. So I mean, it
More
doesn't,
like 30.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to see.
Calorie wise, yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to see, like, kind of what people are reaching for by habit, especially in times like these when people are just trying to grab the familiar foods.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I guess we could generally say, this is a real simpleton view to it, but a proper, healthy diet is what everyone should be focusing on to support their healthy immune system.
Right.
And
So
that's hard to do today sometimes.
Yeah. And, that's kind of what I was getting at. That picture that I put up was of the produce aisle, and that was last week, after people had already been hoarding stuff. I haven't had a problem getting berries since this thing started,
No, we haven't either.
But I can't get bread. Yeah. You can find berries. I can get, pretty much get any vegetable I want right now. And, you got these, zealots on the internet that sit there and say, oh, bananas are getting us obese. That's a comment on Starting Strength Radio where I spoke. The guy actually tried to make an argument that people are eating too much bananas. And it was just absurd. And I'm like, then why can we still buy bananas? And that's one of the sweeter fruits that, more people like. It's, and I can still find them. So, my whole thing, you hear me in all these podcasts, I'm always bashing self-reported data, because most of our diet information is based on self-reported data. And that extends to the things we're going to discuss today about immunity. So what I said in that post was, hey, go out to the store right now during a time that people are hoarding everything, and what will you see in stock? Some of the healthiest foods you can get a hold of.
Yeah.
And that takes me back to, I brought up the term oxidative stress earlier. So, what does that mean, right? So basically we have pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory molecules circulating through our body. And the human body is, most of our feedback loops are negative feedback. So if something goes up, something else has to bring it down. That's the very oversimplified version of it. I know you've talked about it in other podcasts here. So what you want is you don't want to have too much pro-inflammatory stuff going on or too much anti-inflammatory stuff going on either, because that can knock your body out of balance. That's a very simplistic way to look at it. So when we're talking about diet and exercise, that people are always talking about oxidative stress, right? So antioxidants kind of counteract that. When you have oxidative stress, you create an inflammatory response. So that means that things can get into your cells can swell, things that are inside the cell can go outside the cell, and vice versa, and you can get a lot of cell death. So cells are always dying constantly. You're constantly turning them over. What you don't want is more dying than you're replacing, right?
Right.
So fruits and vegetables have always been the cornerstone of a healthy diet because obviously they have a lot of fiber in them. They're a good source of carbohydrate, but they're a good source of vitamins and minerals, but they're also good sources of antioxidants. The most popular antioxidants are vitamin C, vitamin E, but then you have flavonoids and polyphenols and various other compounds that are in fruits and vegetables exclusively that also counteract oxidative stress. So if you're eating a poor diet and you're sedentary, you're probably creating more oxidative stress than your body can counteract. So you're kind of out of balance, so to speak, right? And if you kind of clean up those areas and you're physically active, let's not even talk about training yet. Let's say that you're just not sitting around all the time and you're constantly on the go, like, a truck driver, a construction guy, somebody who's moving around a lot. So now you're very active. So you're counteracting it through that. You start adding more fruits and vegetables in. Now you're getting more of those antioxidants to counteract those pro-oxidant effects of just daily life. So when you take your typical American who's obese and eats poorly, that person's probably inflamed to some degree. You might take their blood and they might appear quote-unquote healthy based on what we know, because there's a lot of markers that we still haven't quite discovered to kind of isolate this. So I think the classic one they look at is C-reactive protein. It's a very broad inflammatory biomarker, but you can't really isolate what exactly is inflamed. Then they have all your different cytokines, which are signaling molecules that kind of tell you whether something's inflamed, and some of them are tied to certain things and others are tied to other things. But still, it's like when it comes to the specificity of these blood values, they really haven't narrowed down how to identify, okay, are you inflamed and where? So you can have a horrible lifestyle and then appear healthy on a blood panel if you're just a young guy. You might not see it.
Right.
So again, you take your typical American, overweight, obese, sedentary, you get them to start exercising, you throw in some fruits and vegetables, and you can counteract some of those things, right? Then some are higher than others. So berries, I mentioned berries earlier. I eat them all the time, but they also are a very good source of antioxidants. I drink a lot of tea, very good source of antioxidants.
Right.
We talked about coffee earlier. Coffee also contains antioxidants. And all of this kind of counteracts the normal amount of stress that you encounter just being a human, right?
Right.
And since our diet's gotten so poor, we're not very good at that anymore, right? So that's just we're talking about baseline here. We're not even talking about optimizing, right?
And so when you're talking about processed foods, right? We just talked about breads and buns and that kind of stuff. Is it the processing that removes a lot of that antioxidant content, or is it just the materials that they're made of? So like the the grains the whole grains that are used to make the breads, are they just low in antioxidants to begin with, and then the processing removes or breaks down those nutrients?
Yeah. When you refine a grain, you're taking out a lot of nutrients. So like fiber is the classic one, right? You go from a whole grain to a white flour, you're losing fiber. Then also because of the milling, you don't get as much gel formation from that fiber, so you kind of get that limitation too. That's why, I was teaching this in Houston a couple months ago, and it dawned on me. I'm like, no matter what bread product I buy, whether it's whole grain or white or whatever, I'm never full. And that's why, because when you mill it down and it gets into a flour form, you don't get as much gel formation. That's what gives you that satiety.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, no, when you start processing food, you start taking things out. But I think the bigger problem is a lot of people just don't eat a lot of fruits and vegetables.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we had to think about let's use this term generically, healthy, nutritious diet. What for our listening audience, what would you recommend as an expert right now during this time that people begin to look at as a daily diet? Just give us some generalities. And I know these are general principles, but I mean, like you said, this is just basic principles. Let's say breakfast, lunch, and dinner. What kind of foods would you recommend? Or maybe even you're talking more like we said, food types. Increase your fruits and vegetables intake. Increase your, like you and I talked yesterday over the phone. We were talking, I didn't know this. You said, everybody wants to eat oranges for vitamin C. But immediately when you cut an orange open or you drink orange juice, it exposes the vitamin C to oxygen, which causes an oxidative state. It breaks it down. And you said, people don't know this, but red peppers have more vitamin C than oranges do. And it's tied within the fiber, so it doesn't release itself until you ingest it. And I didn't know, red bell peppers. I had never known that. But that just says to me, hey, honey, go get some more red bell peppers right now during the week and let's mix it in our diet, basically. Right. So give us some practical examples of how you would recommend people to eat during this time to best support their natural, innate, and adaptive immunity.
Sure. So I think the first thing that anybody could do is just find a fruit that they like to eat. Obviously some are better than others. So if you could eat blueberries or raspberries or blackberries, that'd be great. But if you don't like that and you're much more comfortable eating a banana, that's great too. Red bell peppers are good. I think that the main takeaway from these recommendations is this isn't going to make you super immune. It's going to raise your baseline, because I think a lot of our listeners that have a poor diet, their baseline can be improved. They just have a shitty baseline that can be easily improved with lifestyle changes. Now, if you're somebody that's doing all that stuff right now, mega dosing some of these antioxidants isn't going to be helpful. I think that's an important message to take away. If you're eating a healthy diet, taking a bunch of C and E and all these other things, that you might see some improvements because the literature is mixed on this, but it's not going to be like this super drug that's going to make you, immune to everything. But, let me back up here. So back to practical examples. When I wake up in the morning, I have, a bowl of berries, I'm bigger, I lift a lot. I'm pretty active. So I need a little bit more food than, somebody who doesn't. So I have a, medium-sized bowl of berries. And then throughout the day, I might have more of that because I'm a creature of habit. I will eat the same things over and over again. But let's say I wanted some more variety, right? There's other things that I like. So sometimes I go to the store and I'm like, man, I just want that big, massive Fuji apple. It looks real good. So I'll eat that. And that gets me nice and full. Because remember, in addition to obtaining all these antioxidants from these fruits, they're also filling because there's a high water content. Something like apples has skin, berries have seeds in it and skin. All those things contain fiber. Fiber, and when you're talking about soluble fiber, it typically forms a gel, not always, but typically it forms a gel in your body, which allows you to become more full. It's also one of the ways by which it lowers LDL cholesterol and optimizes your lipoprotein profiles. So that's another example. And then I like to have, this is the biggest thing. So when I'm coaching clients, I always say, because they're like, I don't know what to eat. I'm like, well, you know what? The first thing is try to limit your options. The more options there are, the more
I agree 100%
room
on that. Yeah.
Create a short list.
Yep.
I think Rip and I talked about this on another podcast I did, and I had asked him because he's an older gentleman, so he was around in the 60s and 70s. So I asked him, I'm like, hey, what was the grocery store like back then versus now? And he said that there were fewer options. You can go out and there was maybe 2 or 3 types of hamburger. Now there's like 50. I forgot what example he used exactly, but you get the idea.
Oh, yeah.
So
sure.
I think variety has really confused people in terms of what to eat. I think we're much simpler than that. So the way that I coach somebody is I say, get a lean protein, get a vegetable, and get a fruit or a whole grain. If you achieve those 3 things, and if you want to throw some dairy in there instead of lean protein, you can do that. But if you get those 3 things in each of your meals 3 to 5 times a day, you're probably going to be okay. You're probably going to lose weight without even trying if you can maintain that throughout the entire week. And, you're just going to feel overall better and healthier, whatever that means for, any person. But, so I just gave you some examples. So for breakfast, I just had an omelet with bell peppers mixed in there, all 3 colors, yellow, green, red. Then I throw spinach in there as well, get some vitamin K. And I had a bowl of blueberries. Yesterday I had raspberries. Then later on, I might have, raspberries at the gym. I have these containers stacked on top of each other. So when I'm at the gym working, I can go grab those. And then I'll have rice, sometimes white, sometimes black, sometimes brown. I kind of cycle it through, but I just kind of stick to rice for my grain. And then I'll mix in, I like to mix bell peppers with everything. I think they work well with everything. That's just me, though. Somebody else might want more onions, or somebody else might want more greens.
Sure.
But you see where I'm going here? Play around with different ones and see how it works. And I get frozen. Frozen's not ideal. Sure, you lose some nutrients there, but I'm not going to cut them up and eat the fresh ones. So not having any is a worse option, right?
Right.
So if you're going to get bags and bags of frozen and saute them up with some spray butter, you're doing just fine. If you want to make yourself a salad, eat them raw. That's just fine too. And then I like to eat canned salmon. This Wild Planet brand is really good.
Oh,
yeah.
I like
a little bit
stuff.
pricey. It's really good, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, that kind of brings me on the topic of fats, right? So healthy fats have, and I'll explain what that means in a second. Healthy fats have anti-inflammatory properties, right?
Right.
So healthy fats. So we have different types of fats that we consume. We have saturated fat, which is, typically a solid like butter or, animal fat. And that's typically been considered the bad fat. I don't like to list one being bad, one being good. It's just you have to keep the quantities in proportion. So if you eat a lot of saturated fat, that's typically associated with heart disease. And in the 80s, there was this anti-egg, anti-animal fat campaign that, got people scared of, eggs and whole fat dairy and, red meat that's fatty. But if you actually look at where most of the saturated fat comes from in the food supply, it comes from cooking oils.
Right.
So, which is interesting because they hydrogenate these oils. They treat the liquid oil with hydrogen to make it more solid. And if they fully hydrogenate it, it is a saturated fat. If it's partially, it's a trans fat. Trans fats have since been banned. But, you can still make a saturated fat from an unsaturated fat if you go through the full hydrogenation process. And also, any oil contains saturated fat. So just because it's liquid doesn't mean that it is saturated fat free. It adds up, right? So if you're cooking a bunch of food or buying processed foods that were made with some sort of seed oil or vegetable oil, it's going to have more and more saturated fat depending on how much they use. So the number one place that you can cut saturated fat is from oil over animal fat. Unless you're eating, 2 pounds of ribeye steaks every day, which we're not recommending, or 2 dozen eggs. We're not saying to do that, but a couple eggs a day and a 6-ounce portion of steak is probably not going to kill you.
Right.
But if you're eating a lot of that, it adds up. But the takeaway there is most saturated fat comes from oils. in our food supply in general. So let's kind of establish that. So of course, if you're eating a lot of saturated fat, that can lead to heart disease that promotes a pro-inflammatory state, et cetera, right? So that's probably quote unquote bad for your immune system, given the topic we're talking about. Long term, of course, these are chronic things. If you drink a gallon of milk today, you're not going to, trash your immune system. But if you're doing that every day for 30 years, sure, you're going to have a compromised immune system to some extent. And I'm not saying you're going to become immunocompromised, but it's going to be below optimal, and you're going to be at higher risk of heart disease. So those are your saturated fats. Go on, Darren.
Well, I was just going to say, and that leads us to kind of that concept we said earlier, and your underlying health status prior to being exposed to some type of bug is really important.
Yeah.
And it's cumulative over time. It's definitely cumulative over time. And what we see in modern culture, in American culture, definitely, is as the population continues to age, we see people living longer and longer and longer, but they have more and more degenerative diseases because there's a decline in overall human health, not only due to age, but also due to lifestyle factors,
right,
to what we're talking about, a poor diet. It doesn't show up immediately, but give it several years or give it whatever duration we want to talk about here, those deficiencies start showing up over time, and how, like you said, our immune system is not optimizing its abilities.
Yeah, so the next fat down the list would be your unsaturated fatty acids, right? So when we're talking about fat, we're really talking about triglycerides or triacylglycerol if you're talking to the biochemist. And triglycerides are composed of fatty acids in a glycerol molecule. So when we're talking about saturated versus unsaturated, we're really talking about the fatty acid component of the triglyceride, right? So we've just talked about saturated fatty acids. Let's talk about unsaturated. So we have monounsaturated, which chemically that means that it has a single double bond. And then we have polyunsaturated, which biochemically that's multiple double bonds. The chemistry of it's not important right now. We're just kind of keeping it very basic. And then you have different classifications of where those double bonds exist on the molecule, depending on which end you're counting from. Again, the specifics of that's not important. It's just more to understand where these names come from. So you have your omega-3s, your omega-6s, then there's 7s and 9s, but typically we're worried about the 3s and the 6s and the ratio between the two. So most of our diet contains omega-6s, and those are polyunsaturated typically, and we have essential and non-essential. So that means whether you can get it from the diet, which would be essential, you have to get it from your diet. Non-essential means that you produce it in your body. Our essential omega-6 is your linoleic acid. And that's pretty easy to obtain. You can get that from avocados, seeds, nuts, oils, etc. And then your essential omega-3 is your alpha-linolenic acid. And we'll go into why that one is so important. So typically you want the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 about 4-1. We're about 5-fold higher than that in the typical American diet because we're eating a lot of vegetable oils in the foods that they manufacture, a lot of these junk foods. Omega-6s, so fatty acids can elongate, right? So if you have a fatty acid of a certain length, and we're not going to go into the specifics of that, it can become longer in the human body. And omega-6s become arachidonic acid. It's this longer chain fatty acid that's much longer than your typical linoleic acid. And arachidonic acid triggers the release of these molecules called eicosanoids, which for the omega-6 pathway tend to be more pro-inflammatory, although there are some anti-inflammatory ones there as well.
Right.
But generally, the omega-6s produce pro-inflammatory eicosanoids. The omega-3s, your ALA, which eventually lengthens to become eicosapentaenoic acid or docosahexaenoic acid, EPA and DHA, release more anti-inflammatory eicosanoids. So you kind of want these in balance. So typically you want a 4-1 ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. We're probably 5-fold that right now in America. So therefore, you're producing more and more of these pro-inflammatory eicosanoids in relation to the anti-inflammatory ones that come from primarily omega-3s.
Yeah, and that causes. We used to talk about this a lot when we talked about certain diet types, like when we talked about the zone versus Whole 30 versus paleo diet or the primal diets. All these different diets. That causes them, when we get these pro-inflammatory agents in our body, it causes joint pain, inflammatory conditions in the joints. It causes a catabolic state in relationship to stressors that are outside of us. And again, like you're saying, Robert, all of that influences our immune system defense state. We cannot limit all stress to our immune system. But when possible, we want to create a strong system and then influence it to the appropriate stressors that we want so that we're getting the positive effect, the maximum genetic expression of our genome, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Now we have a high ratio of omega-6s to 3s in the American diet, which means we're probably producing more pro-inflammatory molecules versus your anti-inflammatory molecules. So
that means your immune system is working overtime and under stress more than it should be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So where do you get omega-3s? Typically when you go to the store, now we got these omega-3 eggs, grass-fed beef, and all these plant products that are like flaxseed oil. Mm-hmm. And those are high in alpha-linolenic acid, which is an omega-3. But what are we really trying to get from this omega-3? So remember how I said these fatty acid chains can get longer? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So ALA, I'll just refer to it as ALA moving forward because it rolls off the tongue easier, and that's the accepted abbreviation. So ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, can elongate to become one of two molecules, EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, or DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. The problem is we're not very efficient at converting that because the omega-6 elongation pathway and the omega-3 elongation pathway are the same. They share the same pathway. And since we're getting more 6s and 3s, we're converting more of those 6s to arachidonic acid than we're converting those 3 to EPA or DHA. So where else can we get EPA and DHA? Well, we can get it from fish in its free form. So when you consume fatty fish, marine fish, that is high in fat, you're getting EPA and DHA. You're not getting ALA. So you're basically cutting out the middleman. That's why this push for eating fish 3 times a week has been so popular for the last 30 years because you don't have to go through that inefficient conversion process, and you're going to get a lot more of it. And EPA and DHA is highly anti-inflammatory. So long term, again, if you're eating this over a long period of time, years and years and years chronically, it promotes better immune health, right? And then the last of the unsaturated fatty acids I want to touch on is your monounsaturated fatty acids. And those are typically the highest, the food that is highest in monounsaturated fat is olive oil, which kind of popularized the Mediterranean diet, right? So they say that people that ate in the Mediterranean region tended to eat more olive oil, nuts, and seeds and cheese, etc. Olive oil is 70% monounsaturated fat, and they found associations between olive oil consumption and reduction in triglycerides and LDL cholesterol, increases in HDL or your good cholesterol. Neither are good or bad. Again, we're talking about feedback loops, right? That's a whole nother topic, and I wrote a 6,500-page paper on fats that's going to come out and cover all this, which will be nice and interesting. But again, when I talk about
that's a lot of pages.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It might be a 2-part. We're still deciding. Sure. But the thing about fats can be highly anti-inflammatory if you're getting them from the right place. I always tell my clients, and when I'm giving these talks, that you don't have to try to eat enough fat. You're going to do that on accident. It's in everything. But the quality of fat is where the effort, you have to put in some effort. So I always say, eat, your nuts, a little bit of seeds. If you're going to cook with oil, use some olive oil or put some in your salad because it's actually better consumed in a salad than cooked due to the various boiling points. And eat fish, at least 3 times a week. Eat a couple servings of fatty fish to get that EPA and DHA. Also make sure it's wild caught because the diet of the fish will determine the EPA and DHA content. These fish that are farm raised are fed a high soy diet, so they're not going to have as much of that EPA and DHA. So wild caught fish is preferred for that purpose.
Now, where is the thinking on fish oil these days? Because they always advertise on the fish oil bottles the high, the DHA content.
So that depends on, obviously they advertise the contents. Number one, from my understanding, and research is constantly changing on this, if you eat it from fish, it's more bioavailable than if you get it from fish oil. But obviously,
Right.
I'm not going
Sure.
to tell somebody to take a fish
Yeah.
oil supplement if they don't like fish, So you could still get it that way.
Right. So what you're saying is if someone doesn't like fish and they can find a good quality fish oil supplement that has a good balance EPA DHA ratio, and do you have a recommended ratio for that for fish oil?
I don't think they've established a ratio there, but typically 3 grams a day is like the max that people
Yeah.
recommend. of
That's
fish
what
oil.
I thought it was. Yeah, I thought it was 3 grams or 3,000 milligrams.
But I don't know that they've established a ratio for one of those fatty acids versus the other.
Yeah, I know for a while there when we were in our CrossFit gyms, I mean, people were recommending like 10,000 milligrams or 10 grams a day. It got to be a little crazy, and then everything kind of recorrected itself. But so what you're saying is that if people don't like to eat fish or marine sources, then they can go ahead and, in this sense, if they're looking for good quality fats, they can eat a vegetable-based fat, a nut or seed-based fat, and then also, and when I mean vegetable, I mean like avocados, olive oils, those types of things, or they can also take a fish oil supplement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember, you're getting some EPA and DHA from plant products and also from, your grass-fed
Beef or
grass-fed beef, omega-3 eggs. You're getting some.
Yeah.
It's just we're not very efficient at converting it because the omega-6 pathway shares is the same as the omega-3 pathway.
Yeah, it takes up most of the resources. Yeah.
Traffic jam. Now, so with the nuts, I mean, what kind of serving size would someone be looking for? Because I know I've talked to many clients who come in the gym and they're like, I like to snack on nuts, and we'll take a look at how much they're eating every day. I had a gentleman in here recently who was eating like a cup to a cup and a half of sunflower seeds every day as a snack.
A lot. Yeah.
And we looked it up. That's like 900 calories. 70 grams of fat plus. So what kind of serving sizes should they be aiming for?
Typically, just the palm of your hand gives you one serving.
Okay. Yeah.
And not squeezed up in a fist, just laying flat right in the middle. That gives you plenty. Like I think 16 almonds is a serving.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I have a daily, I have a daily habit now. My wife one time said, Michelle said, hey, if Brazil nuts are very, very high in selenium, really high in selenium. And so,
if they're grown in Brazil, that's the key.
Okay. Well,
because it's very soil dependent. So that's
okay. Well, cool. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
There we go. Our expert. And so, but I eat one Brazil nut a day because she said that's about as much selenium as you need in your diet a day if they're grown from Brazil.
Yeah, if they're grown from Brazil.
But it's just something I do. We've got this mixed nut jar in our pantry, and I go in there and I just pick out a Brazil nut, and I usually eat some cashews and pecans and hazelnuts and other nuts, but peanuts every now and then are in there too.
So, we talked about fruits and vegetables in terms of the various micronutrients and flavonoids and polyphenols and all that fun stuff that helps combat oxidative stress. And we've talked about healthy fats and omega-3s and monounsaturated fats, which also can give you long-term, it can optimize your immune system in the long term. And I think the big thing to take away from this is that these things are chronic. So right now, this whole thing's happening. Nothing you take is going to change your situation right now. But if you do this over the course of months, years, probably more years, you're going to probably see some improvement. You're going to see yourself getting less sick. You're going to recover faster, etc. But it's not one of those things that happens overnight. Adaptation takes time. You have to continuously, like we do with the lifting, you have to continuously apply stress, and we adapt to it. Which brings up another thing you and I talked about, how there's mixed data out there on exercise in terms of megadosing antioxidants, because when you exercise, whether it's aerobic or lifting, you're applying stress. And when you apply stress, you're creating oxidative stress. Right. But we want to adapt to that, and we do adapt to that. So there are some papers out there that have reported the blunting of exercise adaptations due to megadosing multivitamins. At least that's not multivitamins, antioxidants.
Right.
And they believe that that's part of the issue. I mean, there's a lot of factors there that you can't really measure, so we can't definitively say that, but it kind of makes sense, right? You apply stress, you need to adapt to it. And now if you start mega dosing a bunch of antioxidants to basically take the pain away. You don't learn how to manage it, right?
Right. I kind of look at it this way, and I think there are generally two different schools of thought when we talk about the immune system. We talk about stress, and we all as strength coaches here, and also from the scientific side of our background, Robert, yours and mine, we think stress is a neutral term. There are some stressors that are good stressors that we want, and there are some stressors that are bad stressors that we don't want. But good stress creates adaptation.
Yeah.
It creates the organism to adapt and change to that stress. We want that. That's what happens with strength training. That's what happens with aerobic training. That's what happens with good diets. Our body needs a certain amount of stress to adapt. And so I think when we think about the immune system, there are generally two different schools of thought. Number one is more of an isolatory thought line. I want to stay away from everything. I gotta always stay clean. I've got to keep my immune system from coming in contact with anything that could be a bug.
Yeah.
That's one thought.
Bubble boy.
Yeah,
from
bubble boy
Seinfeld.
thought. And then the other thought is just the opposite. Man, I'm going to go roll in some dirt. Oh, yeah, I got a little cut there. No big deal. And you never clean it out. And you don't have good personal hygiene. And, my body, I just will it to fight that infection, man. That's just the way it is.
Were you the one that told me that someone mentioned to me recently that that's actually children, tend to put stuff in their mouth all the time. And that actually is an adaptive thing because they're exposing their body to antigens. Yeah.
Right. And so there's those two different schools of thought. I don't think either one of those are correct. I think the correct is normally what we see in about all items of discussion that we have on this podcast, and that is a sense of moderation. Using good personal daily hygiene to support your immune system, and at the same time recognizing that you're going to get exposed to stuff. And you can't avoid that necessarily in some environments. Sometimes we can when we know there's a known agent that we need to try to avoid. I mean, no one would want to expose themselves to something like Ebola.
Right.
I mean, that would not be good. But we're constantly coming in contact with antigens, bugs, pathogens in our life every single day, all day long. I mean, we processed our calves this last weekend. We were branding. I'm in the dirt. I'm cutting calves. I'm doing stuff. I'm branding them. They're coming in contact with their environment around them. I'm coming in contact with them. And it's nothing but a good, healthy immune system that basically wards that and fights that off and creates the defenses that we need. And so I think it's important, and what you were talking about, Robert, is that people need to recognize that what you're talking about, good nutrition is like a 401k. You invest right now, and you're hoping that in the future it will fairly quickly, within days, potentially improve your quality of life, but also over a much longer time frame, a much more longitudinal perspective, you're improving your body system's ability to be at a much healthier condition to fight these types of things. It is not day trading. No. It is not, you're not going to see results tomorrow, but you can see results pretty dang fast with good nutrition.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a long-term thing. And I was talking to you, I think, a few weeks ago, about training and testosterone.
Yeah. And
a lot of the papers say that, you're not going to see any chronic changes with training because they're looking at 3 to 4 months, right?
Right,
and
right.
So I would agree with that. You're probably not going to see that in 3 to 4 months. So up until recently, I thought that, you can't really alter your testosterone unless you take steroids,
Right.
Because that these supplements don't work, and the training data is on 3 to 4 month interventions don't show anything. So I've been just checking mine every couple of years. I'm 35. I turned 36 in July. So hypothetically, I'm supposed to be on the decline. And I haven't really been paying attention to it. The first time I checked it, I had lost some weight, and it was a 471, but I wasn't like really lean at the time. I was still, probably at a healthy body fat. And I just didn't really pay attention to it. And I think my free was 52. Then the second time I checked it was 2 years later, and it was 544, and I didn't check the free. And I was like, okay, it went up, I'm eating a little more, I gained a little weight. Sure. Then I checked it 2 more years later, which was this spring, and it was 581. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of things that alter this, throughout a given day or day to day, week to week, et cetera. Sure. But, I've done it at the same time of year, at the same time of day. and under the same conditions. And the only thing that's changed is I've gotten stronger over the last 4 years. And I can't help but to think that, hey, all this training and continuous improvement under the bar probably altered that. It only makes sense, right? And I called you and talked to you about it. And you were like, yeah, that totally makes sense. You train over a long period of time, you're going to alter your testosterone, but 3-4 months, you're not going to see that,
Right. And I think too that's we talked about healthy or unhealthy stresses. That's a healthy stress. Now we could also say that if a guy trains, or the lady does that too, if people train and they don't adequately recover, they're in this constant state of, catabolic state, I guess you say broken down state, that's a bad place to be for our immune system. That causes overtraining, it causes depression, it could cause infections. Look at marathon runners or long endurance athletes that right before a competition, right before a marathon, they've got more colds and infections than they ever have.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just because they're putting so much stress into their immune system. Right now, folks, we want you to train. That's a key first principle here. We want you to train. We want you to have a good diet, and it will improve your immune system health over time. You may not see the immediate results to it. I think there's an immediate psychological component to that, a feeling, a sense of wellness that you also, in a time like we have today, where you're asserting control over something in your life where you feel like almost everything around you is out of control too.
Yeah. I've noticed two things in my training. So I took a little trip last week. So it was about a week that I had stopped training just to prepare for that and go on the trip. And then I had to come back early. But so I started training again last week. And I've noticed two things. Number one, everything feels crazy heavy. And I wasn't away from the bar long enough to have actually detrained from lack of
and you're young
stress.
Enough that, yeah.
So it wasn't that. It's just the sort of ambient stress in our society that's going on. It's really weighing on me. And even though it doesn't psychologically bother me throughout the day,
right,
it definitely had an impact on my training. Yeah. But the second thing I noticed is that after I get done training, I feel so much better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
so much better.
100% believe that. So Robert, let's kind of, I'm going to put this into my simple perspective and viewpoint. So when we talk about nutrition and diet, number one, lots of fruits and veggies on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Lots of fruits, good quality fruits and vegetables. And we talked about all sorts of things, berries and apples and oranges and bananas, but lots of fruits and vegetables, leafy green vegetables, red bell peppers, green bell peppers, squash. Yeah, red bell peppers. We like those a lot. And all these good vegetables. We also talked about good quality meats, good free-range meats, wild fish for its high-quality omega-3 fatty content. So good protein in our diet. And we generally recommend for the training population 150 to 200 grams for males and somewhere between probably 125 to 150 grams for females of good quality protein every single day, right? We got to get that protein in us so that our body can rebuild and support that immune system. And then we talked about all those other good fats that come from nuts and seeds. We talked about olive oils, avocados, right? Am I missing something there? Other fats, good quality fats.
As you said, fish, seeds, olive oils, grass-fed beef.
That's right. Yeah, omega-3s.
So, on that, I had a question. So the reason I kind of brought that up was when I was in Houston, JD had asked me, what if we don't like grass-fed? What if we want to eat just regular beef because it tastes better? And I'm like, well, that's fine. Just throw some fish in there and you've got the benefit of the grass-fed beef,
Yeah, and I'll tell you, too, we have a cow-calf population for the beef industry, and we pre-produce our calves prior to market, so they eat some grain-based feed, but they spend the majority of their life sucking off a mama when we have them, and so they're getting good quality milk from the females, and the females are living on nothing but our good quality forage that we grow on our ranch. And so I would put our beef quality up against anyone's beef quality. And I think a lot of that's, good quality beef is beef that is raised mostly by local ranchers, local everyday guys who are following some good raising techniques and That's really important. So basically what we're telling people to do is stop eating the processed crap, folks. Stop eating the fast food as much. I know the restaurants are still serving out, and you can support those restaurants as you wish to do so, but get the bulk of your diet from these good, healthy perishables.
Yeah, and let's be real. Like McDonald's and Taco Bell don't need your support.
Yeah,
they'll be just fine. Right?
The federal government's going to help them out.
Why don't you go?
Yeah, exactly.
With our money, freaking trillion stimulus. Well, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, we'll leave that one.
Crushing me when I think about that.
We'll keep the lid on that box.
Yeah.
But I mean, go support your local farmers and co-ops, that kind of thing. But yeah.
And so when we talk about nutrition, Robert, you and I talked about this yesterday. I mean, a lot of our diets are deficient in micronutrients, things like zinc, selenium, iron, copper, folic acid, vitamins A, B6, C, and E and D, and that's because we're eating junk. But what you're saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, your goal is get people on a whole foods, good quality diet, and over time, we're going to see a naturally improved immune system.
We've been saying this for 30 years, but shit hasn't changed.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're explaining the breakdown of the different types of fats and the different pro-oxidative and antioxidative compounds, all this kind of stuff, the kind of beauty of all this is, if you just eat whole foods, it works itself out for the most part.
Yeah,
it pretty much does. Yeah. I mean, you could. It's not that these supplements don't work; it's that there's other problems with that, right? So if you're eating a shit diet and then you're supplementing this stuff, guess what? Now you're fat. Now you're more insulin resistant. Now you're in a pro-oxidative state for other reasons, right?
Right.
So you're just basically trying to put a Band-Aid and plug up holes on a sinking ship,
Right. And we eat the nutrients from more than just like you said, fiber. You don't get fiber from a supplement normally. I mean, there are fiber supplements, but we eat those whole foods because of many other properties that they provide, digestive-wise, digestive health, digestive diseases, and health of our colon and all the other parts of our body that, that we need to function correctly through eating all of these forages and these good quality meats and other foods.
Now, we touched a little bit on this earlier, but I had one question for you, Robert, is, generally I have this understanding that when you're under higher stress than normal, psychological stress, there's a tendency to want to go after the sweet and the salty and the really rich, calorically rich foods.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And lack of sleep, too.
Lack of sleep. That. Okay. Yeah. So are there any general suggestions you have when somebody is going through a period of intense psychological stress? Obviously, we have a societal stress going on right now, but it could be, any stress that's going on. Do you have some recommendations of eating in that case?
Sure. So typically, the sweet tooth kicks in more so than the salty, savory tooth. People want sugar, is what I've kind of noticed. What I've heard from clients,
right?
And that's when I say fruit is even more important because it is a natural source of sugar. But then you get the water and the fiber from it, and you're going to eat a fraction of the amount of calories that you would from that pie or that ice cream or whatever. You know?
Yeah.
So either that, and then just as far as like the salty stuff goes, make sure you have enough. It's hard right now to get enough meat protein. So other things that I like to mix up vegetables, throw some mustard on it. Mustard it's a source of vinegar, and vinegar has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity. So I like to put mustard in a lot of my vegetables.
Oh, that's good hint.
Good
hint.
Instead of dressing, I use mustard for a lot of things.
Let's be real; it's the best condiment.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. It's so it's versatile.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, man. So we've gone through and we talked about the immune complex. We've talked a little bit about genetics, what role it plays. We've talked a little bit about the general health body condition status. And then we've talked about nutrition now with Robert. So another thing that can influence our immunity complex is our age. And what we see is over time, once we reach up into our 60s and early 60, 65 years of age, we see that there is a lower production generally of T cells. There's a lower production of autoimmune properties, and our immune system begins to decline over age, just like all the other stuff does, like thermoregulation and like protein synthesis. Right. We get sarcopenia. All of our body systems begin to decline over time. And so age can play a significant role in your immunity also. But like Robert's been saying, and like we've said on many episodes, you can be chronologically 65, but biologically 55. And so our goal is to maximize your genetic expression, maximize your quality of life, and have you maybe be older in years than you actually are in function. And that's the goal. And so, yes, even though we know age declines your immune system, and that's why we're telling people that are over the age of 65, be careful out there. Stay home, quarantine, stay away, because you naturally have a lower immunity than someone who is, say, 35 and healthy too. And so we want to be aware of that. Any comments, guys, on it?
So I know you just had a birthday recently.
I did.
Right. So you're 53. 53.
53.
Yeah. I saw your backflip.
Yeah, I do my obligatory annual backflip.
Yeah.
Standing backflip.
I think your rotation was better than last year. I think you under-rotated a little last year.
Well, thank you.
So,
thank you very much.
It was pretty clean.
Rotation is getting better. I felt pretty good, other than my slacks were kind of tight, and I had to kind of pull them up into my crotch to get enough tuck. I did one before that one, and I under-rotated, but it was because I couldn't get my knees around fast enough. So I had to, pull those slacks way high into the Netherlands and get a little bit better tuck on that. You know what I'm talking about?
So there you go. So you could easily have been part of the at-risk population here, but you're doing your backflips, you're doing your barbell training, you're not at risk.
That's right. Well, I mean, I think that we're all talking about the thing that we preach every single day on this podcast. We talk about this to our strength training clients. We talk about this on forums, on the interwebs, wherever we are. We want to live a healthy lifestyle, and that involves strength training as a first principle. That involves a proper diet as a first principle, healthy lifestyle habits. We're going to talk about that. Let's just talk about sleep and rest for our immune system. Our body needs that 7 to 8 hours every single night. I think Robert gets 12 hours a day. And it needs that sleep so that we can recover. That's our rebuilding phase time. That's our defense building phase time. That's when our hormone production is the best. And we need that sleep cycle. So if you've got a freaky sleep cycle right now because of what's going on and you're stressed out, start taking some melatonin, start drinking a little bit of tea, lavender tea before you go to bed. Get good quality sleep. Get away from digital input, from light sources. Make your room cold, dark, and like a cave, But we need good quality sleep to support a healthy immune system. And I know a lot of people right now are just plain simple. They're stressed. They're losing their jobs. They're worried about their small business or their employer. They're worried about their loved one's health. And I think we just need to put this in perspective and control the things that we can control. There are a lot of things in this mix we just can't control, but our sleep, our diet, and our exercise, even though you may not have access to a local gym, you can still be exercising. Don't use that as an excuse.
Yeah, we put out 20 workouts you can do at home with little or no equipment.
That's right.
If you don't have access to anything.
That's right. And so, sleep is very important too. And then the last thing is environment. Our environment can influence our immune system health. Being around chemicals, being around different types of chemicals, both liquids, gases, fumes, the type of environmental stresses that our body has been through. Some people work in factory environments where it's a very caustic environment, stresses the immune system and puts the immune system under a constant state of stress, and they become immunodeficient. Also, there are some medical conditions that we talked about earlier that really aren't environmental, but they are internal medical conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, connective tissue disease like lupus, and all these different immunodeficiency conditions, which people are taking, immunosuppressive drugs for, which naturally lowers their immunities. And so they need to be doing all these things we were talking about. Because, there are a lot of healthy people. Here's a good example. I think Phil Mickelson, the golfer, he has really bad rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
And I think he takes Humira or one of the immunosuppressive drugs. So he needs to be making sure that he's getting a really good diet, that he's exercising regular, that he's getting really good sleep, that he's controlling his mental anxiety and stress, and he needs to be living a healthy life, and all those things influence that. And so that goes without saying for anyone.
Absolutely.
So, well, hey guys, thanks for joining today's podcast. I know it's a long one, but thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can find us at 40fit.com. You can also go to Instagram at 40fitradio. You can email us, info@40fit.com. Trent is at Marmalade Cream. I'm at Dr. Deaton. And Robert, what's yours on Instagram?
_Robert_Santana.
Okay, great. And you have a website too, right?
Weightsandplates.com.
That's right. So if you need any nutrition advice, this is the guy to go to. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not just promoting him to promote him. When I wanted someone to help my daughter with leaning up and help her food quality choices, he was the guy that I sent to her. So this is the man. So if you need help with a proper diet, supporting a healthy immune system, or in your training, whatever it is, this is the go-to guy. Hook up with Robert and he'll work you out a plan, and he can do it online, and he's a great resource. He is our resource at 40fit Radio.
Also, if you need some workout ideas and you're stuck at home right now without equipment, as a reminder, we put out 20 workouts you can do at home with little or no equipment. You can go to 40fit Nation Facebook page and get a link to that email where we sent out the workout plan. Correct. And download it there.
You can also go to 40fit.com and join our newsletter, our monthly updates. And if you'll send me an email to info@40fit.com too, I'll go ahead and forward on to you the link that Trent is talking about. I've had 3 or 4 people already do that.
Yeah, there you go.
So I forwarded on those workouts. It's a PDF file, and it gives you some instructions too. So, hey guys, thanks for joining 40fit Radio, and thanks for joining the 40fit Nation.